What would you say if a child asked you a question so profound it stopped you in your tracks? What if that question had the power to challenge not just your beliefs, but your very purpose? That's exactly what happened one unforgettable evening when the world's, richest man faced a question no one expected. The evening buzzed with excitement. It wasn't every day that Elon Musk, the genius behind Tesla, SpaceX, and Neuralink, took the stage to speak publicly. The venue was packed to capacity, the air electric with anticipation. Rows upon rows of seats stretched into the distance, filled with eager attendees, entrepreneurs, tech enthusiasts, and fans who admired Musk's relentless drive to change the world. The stage itself was minimalistic yet striking. A sleek black podium stood at the center, bathed in soft white lights. Behind it, a massive LED screen displayed breathtaking images of Mars, rocket launches, and futuristic cities. A visual reminder of Musk's dreams for humanity's future. The hum of conversations filled the room, blending with the faint sound of soft classical music playing in the background. Among the crowd sat a little girl, no older than 10, her wide brown eyes sparkling with curiosity. She clutched her father's hand tightly as they navigated through the bustling aisles to find their seats near the middle. Her mother followed closely behind, carrying a small backpack filled with snacks, a notebook, and a well-loved book about space exploration. Her name was Lily. She was a quiet, thoughtful child, the kind who preferred staring at the stars to watching cartoons. At school, her teachers often remarked on her unusual questions that sometimes left even adults speechless. Where did the universe come from? What happens to us after we die? And most recently, the one that had been swirling in her mind, does someone like Elon Musk believe in God? For weeks, Lily had been fascinated by Musk. She had watched his interviews online, read articles about his groundbreaking inventions, and even written a school essay about how she wanted to build rockets someday. To her, Musk wasn't just a billionaire or a genius. He was someone who dared to dream bigger than anyone else. Yet amidst all the admiration, a nagging thought lingered in her young mind. With all his brilliance and achievements, did he ever think about the bigger questions in life? The lights in the auditorium dimmed, and the crowd erupted into applause. Elon Musk stepped onto the stage, his presence commanding yet approachable. He wore his signature black jacket and a subtle smile, his eyes scanning the audience as if trying to connect with each person individually. The murmurs died down, replaced by a palpable silence as everyone leaned in, eager to hear him speak. Lily's heart raced. She barely noticed the way her father patted her shoulder or how her mother whispered something reassuring in her ear. Her focus was entirely on Musk. She had written her question carefully in her notebook, rehearsing it over and over in her mind. What if she got the chance to ask him? What if he answered her? Musk began his talk with his usual charisma, weaving stories about his childhood dreams, his journey in revolutionizing space travel, and his vision for a multi-planetary future. The audience hung on every word, occasionally bursting into laughter at his dry humor or clapping enthusiastically at his bold statements. But for Lily, the talk was more than inspiring. It was a window into Musk's mind. She listened intently, searching for any hint of what he might say if she asked him about God. Would he dismiss the question, as many adults often did, or would he take it seriously? As the presentation came to an end, Musk smiled and addressed the audience. I think that's enough from me for now. Let's open it up to questions. Who wants to go first? Hands shot up all around the room, a sea of eager faces vying for Musk's attention. Lily froze for a moment, her notebook clutched tightly to her chest. Her parents exchanged a glance, silently encouraging her to take the chance she had been waiting for. Summoning all her courage, Lily raised her hand. She felt small amidst the towering adults and the buzz of excitement, but she refused to let fear hold her back. A volunteer noticed her and gestured for her to step forward. The microphone stand was too tall for her, so one of the staff members adjusted it, bending it down to her height. The room, which had been lively with murmurs and movement, suddenly grew quiet. All eyes were on her, this tiny, determined girl standing before one of the most influential men in the world. Lily's voice trembled as she spoke, but her words were clear and deliberate. Mr. Musk, she began, her gaze unwavering despite the butterflies in her stomach. Do you believe in God? And if you do, how does that affect what you do? The audience gasped softly, a ripple of surprise sweeping through the room. This wasn't the kind of question they had expected. Musk himself seemed momentarily taken aback. He tilted his head, his expression shifting from curiosity to deep thought. For a moment, the entire room held its breath. This wasn't just a question about religion. It was a question that touched the core of human existence, one that demanded introspection and vulnerability. And in that moment, everyone, Lily, her parents, the audience, and even Musk, realized that this wasn't going to be just another Q&A session. This was going to be a conversation that stayed with them forever. Lily had always been a curious child, the kind of person who asked questions that made adults pause. While her classmates were content with their toys or playing video games, she spent hours staring out of her bedroom window, gazing at the night sky. There, above her small suburban town, the stars shimmered in their infinite vastness, each one a distant sun, a possibility. The questions would come to her in waves, sometimes making her heart race with excitement, and other times, overwhelming her with a sense of wonder and uncertainty. It was in these quiet moments, alone with the stars, that Lily first began to wonder about the universe. Why did it exist? Where did it come from? And more importantly, where were we going? She had learned in school about the planets and the stars, and from the books her father brought home, she discovered more about the mysteries of space. She became fascinated by the idea that humans could one day travel to Mars, or even beyond, to explore the unknown corners of the cosmos. But as her curiosity about space grew, so did her questions about life itself. Lily's philosophical curiosity wasn't confined to outer space. She would ask her parents deep questions about existence, questions that they, with all their love and care, struggled to answer. Why are we here? She once asked her mother as they sat on the front porch watching the sunset. What happens when we die? Her mother smiled gently, answering as best she could, but Lily could sense that there was something deeper, something more fundamental, that they couldn't put into words. Her father, a practical man, often encouraged her to think about the world around her, to look for answers in books, in science and in exploration. But Lily felt something was missing. She wondered at times if the answers were something beyond logic, something beyond science. That's when she started reading about Elon Musk. His achievements and vision for the future captured her attention like nothing else had. Musk was no ordinary person. He was a visionary, a man with the audacity to dream not just of new technologies, but of changing the very fabric of society. He was building rockets to send humans to Mars, creating electric cars to save the planet, and imagining a future where humanity could thrive beyond Earth. But what intrigued Lily the most about Musk wasn't just his accomplishments. It was the way he seemed to view the world. His answers to big questions, his ambitious ideas, and the way he talked about the future left her both inspired and confused. For a 10-year-old like Lily, it was hard to wrap her mind around someone like Musk. On the one hand, he seemed to embody everything she admired: brilliance, determination, and the courage to push boundaries. On the other hand, he was often elusive, never fully explaining the deeper, more intangible things that occupied her mind. She'd seen countless interviews where Musk discussed technology, progress, and even artificial intelligence. But there was always one thing missing in his public persona, something that Lily couldn't ignore. She didn't know exactly what it was, but she knew it had to do with the big questions she pondered: life, death, purpose, and ultimately God. So Lily began to ask herself, does Elon Musk believe in God? Did someone as intelligent, as successful as him, ever stop to think about the mysteries of the universe, about creation, about a higher power? It wasn't just a curiosity. It was something deeper, something personal. Lily wanted to know if someone like Musk, who had the power to shape the future, believed in the same things she did. Was there a connection between the exploration of outer space and the exploration of inner space, the human soul? She asked her parents about it one evening over dinner. Her mother, who had always been a deeply spiritual person, smiled softly and said, "Well, honey, different people have different beliefs. Some believe in God, Others don't. It's something each person has to figure out for themselves. But that answer didn't satisfy Lily. She needed to know more. She needed to hear it from someone who had touched the stars, someone who had glimpsed the future in a way no one else had. She needed to know if Elon Musk, a man who was changing the world, had ever questioned the same thing she did. As Lily sat in the audience that day, the excitement around her was almost too much to bear. She had been to a few public events before, but this one felt different. It was as though the entire world was converging in this moment. She could feel the weight of it in the air, thick with anticipation. People were here for Musk's ideas, for his vision, for his promise of a new tomorrow. But Lily was here for something else, something more personal. She was here to ask the question that had been on her mind for weeks. The question that might just change everything. She watched him as he spoke, his voice smooth and confident, his ideas grand and revolutionary. But every time she looked at him, she couldn't help but wonder, was he just a genius? Or was there something more? Did he understand that beyond all the technology and innovation, there was something much bigger than all of this? The room felt as if it had shrunk in size. The crowd's energy had become a distant hum as Lily's heart thudded in her chest. She had practiced the question over and over, each time feeling the weight of it grow. What if she was wrong? What if the question wasn't appropriate? What if he dismissed her, like so many adults had done before? But as the moment drew nearer, Lily felt a quiet strength building inside her. She knew she had to ask it. In the sea of faces, she caught sight of her parents. They smiled at her encouragingly, their eyes full of pride. Her father gave her a little thumbs up. He knew how important this was to her. It wasn't just about meeting Musk or hearing him speak. It was about understanding the man behind the machine, the person who could change the world, and maybe understanding her own place in it. As Musk wrapped up his presentation, the familiar energy of a public Q&A session began to take over. Hands shot up, eager to ask about the future of electric cars, the Mars mission, and the progress of artificial intelligence. But Lily's hand was raised too, tentatively but resolutely. She felt small, just a child among giants. But there was a certainty in her heart now. This was her moment. This was her question. When the moment finally arrived, and the microphone was adjusted to her height, Lily took a deep breath and asked the question that had been burning inside her. Lily stood at the edge of the stage, her small hand gripping the microphone with a force that belied her age. The room was still, but the noise inside her head was deafening. Every step she took towards the microphone felt like it was in slow motion, as if the world was holding its breath, waiting for her to ask the question. She could feel the eyes of the entire audience on her, and though they were mostly strangers, it felt as if they were waiting for something important, something life-changing to happen. Her hands were clammy, her heart thundering in her chest, but she forced herself to keep walking. Her parents' eyes followed her every step. Her father smiled proudly, but there was a nervous edge to it. He had always supported her curiosity. But this moment felt different. This was more than just a child's innocent question. She was about to challenge not just a man, but the very fabric of what the world believed. Her mother's gaze was filled with love, but Lily could see the quiet anxiety in her eyes. She had known that Lily was capable of big things, but this question was something that not even her mother could predict. Lily reached the microphone, adjusting it to her height, feeling the weight of it in her hands. It was too heavy for a child like her to bear, and yet she was standing there, facing one of the most influential men in the world, about to ask a question that might change everything. The room fell silent as the audience waited. There was a tension in the air, tangible sense of anticipation that only grew as the seconds ticked by. It wasn't just because Lily was a child. There was something in her demeanor, in the way she stood there, that suggested this wasn't just another question. This was something deeper. She had something to say, and she wasn't afraid to say it. She took a deep breath, her small chest rising and falling, her voice barely above a whisper. But as the words left her lips, they rang clear and true. "Do you believe in God?" she asked, her voice trembling but unwavering. "And if you do, how does that affect what you do?" There was an immediate stillness in the room, as though time itself had paused. The question, so simple yet so profound, seemed to echo through the vast hall. Elon Musk stood frozen for a moment, his eyes widening slightly in surprise. He had expected many things. A question about space, about electric cars, maybe about artificial intelligence, but not this. Not a question that went straight to the heart of humanity, to the very essence of what drives a person to do the things they do. He looked at Lily, a mix of surprise and contemplation crossing his face. The audience could sense that this was not a typical moment, not a typical question. There was a pause, long enough to make the air feel thick with suspense. Musk, the man who had answered thousands of technical questions in his life, the man who had sent rockets into space, who had changed the face of technology, was now confronted with a question that had no easy answer. Lily's heart pounded in her chest as she waited for his response. Her hands tightened around the microphone, and she could feel her palms beginning to sweat. She had asked the question without knowing what answer she would receive. She had asked it because she needed to know, because she had to understand how someone like Musk, who was shaping the future, saw the world beyond the confines of science. Musk cleared his throat, visibly taking a moment to gather his thoughts. The audience waited, hanging on the edge of their seats. He wasn't just going to give a standard answer. Lily's question demanded something more. "Wow," he finally said, his voice soft but steady. He looked down for a moment, his hands clasped in front of him, as though he were gathering his own thoughts. "That's a really big question, isn't it?" The audience laughed nervously, but the laughter didn't fully mask the emotional weight of the moment. It was as though everyone knew they were about to witness something rare, something truly meaningful. Musk took a deep breath, his eyes turning to Lily once more. "I don't talk about my personal beliefs much, but you've asked something that's, well, it's important. It's something we all grapple with at some point, isn't it? The question of why we're here, what our purpose is." He paused, choosing his words carefully. For a moment, it seemed as if the man who had built an empire of space, exploration, and electric cars was standing before them, not as a genius entrepreneur, but as a human being, searching for the answer to the same questions that Lily and countless others pondered. "I believe that there is something greater than us," Musk continued, his voice quieter now. "I don't know exactly what that is, but there is a force, something that drives everything. It's not something you can easily define, but you can feel it. There's a mystery to the universe that we may never fully understand, and maybe that's okay." His words hung in the air for a moment, the audience absorbing his honesty, his vulnerability. It was rare to hear such a personal admission from someone like Musk, a man who was known for his intellect and his ambition, but not for discussing matters of the heart or the soul. His next words were even more profound. "I think that's part of what drives me, though. The pursuit of knowledge, the exploration of space. It's a way of understanding, of seeking out the unknown. But at the same time, I can't help but think that there's a bigger picture. Maybe we're all part of something larger." Lily stood motionless, her eyes wide as she absorbed every word. She had asked her question, hoping for an answer. But what she hadn't expected was the deep, thoughtful reflection that Musk had shared. His words resonated with her in a way that went beyond understanding. She had always believed that the answers to life's biggest questions couldn't be found in textbooks or research papers. There had to be something more. The audience, too, was moved by the rawness of Musk's response. There was a collective exhale, as if they, too, had been holding their breath, waiting for a sign that the man who had revolutionized the way we think about technology was, at his core, just like everyone else, a human being trying to make sense of the universe, trying to understand his place in it just as Lily was. For a few moments there was a silence in the room, filled only with the soft rustle of the audience shifting in their seats, reflecting on the depth of the conversation. It was a moment that no one had anticipated, a moment where the question of faith, of belief, and of humanity transcended the usual tech talk and ventured into the realm of the deeply philosophical. Lily's question had done something incredible. It had forced a man known for his brilliant mind to reflect on the mysteries of life, and in doing so, he had shared a part of himself that no one had seen before. And in return, the audience had witnessed something rare, a moment of true connection, a shared understanding that no technology or rocket could ever provide. Musk smiled softly at Lily, his expression a mix of gratitude and respect. "Thank you for that question," he said, his voice filled with warmth. "It's a good reminder that, no matter how much we know or how far we go, we're all still searching for something, And that's okay. Lily smiled, her heart swelling with the weight of the moment. She hadn't just asked a question, she had sparked a conversation that transcended the world of rockets and electric cars, one that reached deep into the soul of humanity. And in that moment, she knew that somehow, she had found an answer to her own question. There was something larger than all of this, something that connected us all, no matter how small or how great we might be. The room, once silent in awe, now hummed with the quiet murmur of voices. The question, so simple yet so profound, had sparked something within everyone present. The air felt different, as though a veil had been lifted, and the audience could see the world through a new lens. They weren't just at a tech conference anymore. They were participants in a moment of deep reflection, a moment that had transcended the typical boundaries of knowledge, ambition, and innovation. Elon Musk sat at the edge of the stage, his eyes fixed on the audience but his thoughts clearly elsewhere. He had always been known for his groundbreaking work in space exploration, artificial intelligence, and electric cars. But in this moment, as the weight of Lily's question hung in the air, he found himself navigating new terrain that had nothing to do with rockets or technology. It was the terrain of belief, purpose, and humanity. He had spoken honestly, sharing his thoughts on the mysteries of existence, but the question lingered with him long after he had answered. He looked out over the crowd, his gaze softer now, as though seeing them for the first time, not as fans or followers but as fellow travelers. In this human experience, each with their own search for meaning, Lily, standing silently at the edge of the stage, felt the full weight of the moment. She had asked her question, without truly understanding the depth of what she was seeking. She had wanted to know how someone as brilliant as Elon Musk viewed the world beyond the boundaries of science. But now, as the room around her shifted from the thrill of tech talk to the quiet hum of introspection, she realized that her question had ignited something much bigger. It wasn't just about Musk's beliefs, it was about all of them. The audience, herself, and even the larger world. She turned to her parents, who had been standing beside her, their faces reflecting the same mix of pride and awe. Her father, usually so composed, now looked lost in thought, his brow furrowed as though he, too, were grappling with something deeper than the world of technology. He had always understood. Her mother, ever the supportive figure, smiled gently at Lily, but there was a hint of something more in her eyes, a realization that their lives, which had been so grounded in the pursuit of practical answers, were now part of a much larger narrative, a narrative about faith, belief, in the search for something beyond the material. "What do you think?" her father asked, breaking the silence. His voice was softer than usual, almost as if he were afraid to speak too loudly, as if the moment was too sacred for ordinary conversation. Lily looked up at him, her expression thoughtful. She had always wondered about the big questions, the meaning of life, why we exist, and where humanity was headed. But now, after hearing Musk's response, she felt a sense of peace settle within her. She didn't have all the answers, and maybe no one ever would. But there was something comforting in Musk's uncertainty. He had spoken about the search for knowledge, and in doing so, had opened up a conversation about something far deeper. It was okay not to have everything figured out. I think it's okay not to know everything," she said, her voice a little more certain than she had expected. "I mean, he's looking for answers just like everyone else. We're all trying to figure it out, right?" Her father nodded slowly, his eyes still fixed on Musk, who was now speaking to an audience member a few rows back. "I think you're right," he said quietly. "Sometimes we're so focused on finding concrete answers, we forget that the questions themselves are what matter, and there's something powerful in that uncertainty." Lily smiled at her father's insight. For the first time, she felt a deep sense of connection to the people around her, not just to her parents, but to the entire room, to Musk himself, and to everyone who was ever part of a search for meaning. Meanwhile, Elon Musk, sitting back in his chair, continued to listen to the ongoing discussion sparked by his response. People around him were no longer asking about the future of space travel or AI. They were talking about the bigger questions, the questions that Musk had dared to confront in his answer to Lily. Some questioned the role of belief in innovation. Others wondered about the importance of empathy and human connection in shaping the future. But what was clear was that the conversation had shifted. The focus was no longer on what they could build with their hands, but what they could build with their hearts. One of the audience members, a woman in her 30s, leaned toward her neighbor and spoke in a low voice, but loud enough for Musk to hear. "You know, I always admired him for his intellect, but I never expected him to be so open, so vulnerable. It's like we're all on this journey together." Her words hung in the air, and Musk, hearing her, looked up and met her gaze. He nodded gently, acknowledging her sentiment without saying a word. He didn't have all the answers, and he was beginning to realize that maybe he wasn't supposed to. What mattered now was that he was no longer alone in his search for meaning. The audience, his fans, and even the young girl had joined him in a conversation that had no easy answers. And for the first time, he felt a deep sense of connection with them all. The conversation spread throughout the crowd, as people began to reflect on their own lives and their own searches for meaning. Some had always believed in a higher power, while others were still grappling with their doubts. Some were moved by Musk's honesty. Others were inspired by Lily's courage to ask the question in the first place. But there was one common thread that ran through it all: the search for something larger than themselves, something that could give their lives purpose and direction. As the event drew to a close, Elon Musk stood up and made his way toward Lily. The crowd parted slightly, giving him a clear path. He had a soft smile on his face, one that reflected both gratitude and understanding. Lily looked up at him, her eyes wide with respect. "Thank you for answering my question," she said, her voice quieter now but filled with sincerity. Musk crouched down to her level, his eyes meeting hers. "No, thank you, Lily," he said, his voice carrying a warmth that was unexpected. "You've reminded me of something important. We all need to ask the big questions, and sometimes it's the simplest questions that lead to the most profound answers." Lily smiled back, feeling the weight of the moment. She hadn't just asked a question. She had ignited a conversation that would continue long after the event had ended. And as she stood there, facing Musk, she realized that she, too, was part of something much larger than herself. This moment, this exchange, was a turning point, not just for her, but for everyone who had been part of it. As the crowd began to disperse, people walked away with new perspectives, new questions, and a renewed sense of connection to one another. The event, which had started as a simple gathering to discuss technology, had turned into something far more meaningful. It had become a celebration of humanity's shared journey, a journey that was as much about the questions we ask as the answers we find. And for Lily, the little girl who had dared to ask the big question, it was a moment that would stay with her forever, a reminder that sometimes the simplest words can change the course of a conversation, and perhaps even the course of a life. The room was quiet as the final words of the event echoed in the minds of everyone who had been part of it. The lights had dimmed and the crowd had dispersed. Yet the energy of the moment lingered, like a soft hum that filled the space. It was as though the questions posed that day had not been confined to the stage, but had taken root in the hearts and minds of all who had witnessed the exchange. What had started as a typical tech conference had transformed into something much more profound, a shared reflection on life, belief, and purpose. One simple question from a child, an innocent, yet powerful inquiry, had triggered an emotional and intellectual journey for everyone involved. For Lily, the little girl with a curiosity that stretched far beyond her years, it had been a moment of bravery and clarity. For Elon Musk, a man known for his groundbreaking achievements in technology and space exploration, it had been an invitation to open up, to share his vulnerabilities, and to step outside the realm of innovation to consider something far more fundamental. What drives humanity, and how do we navigate this vast and mysterious universe? And for the audience, it was a reminder that sometimes it is the simplest of questions that challenge the most complex of minds. Lily had not asked about the future of space exploration, the newest advances in artificial intelligence, or the next big tech breakthrough. Instead, she had asked, "Do you believe in God? And if you do, how does that affect what you do?" It was a question so profound in its simplicity that it broke through the noise of everyday life and technological achievement, touching something deeper within everyone who heard it. Musk's response had been thoughtful, candid, and reflective. It had resonated with people of all ages, backgrounds, and beliefs, as it underscored a fundamental truth: no matter how much we achieve or how far we travel, we are all still searching for meaning, and that search, Musk had explained, is what fuels our creativity, our desire to innovate, and our need to connect with others. As the event concluded, many in the audience found themselves contemplating the idea of purpose in a new light. What drives them? What questions have they left unanswered in their own lives? It was clear that the event had ignited something powerful, a deep and shared reflection about what it means to be human. Lily, too, had undergone a transformation. She had entered the conference as a curious child, unsure of where her questions might lead. She had asked her question in innocence, not fully understanding its weight. But now, as she stood amidst the crowd, her heart was full. She hadn't just asked Elon Musk about God. She had reminded everyone in that room about the importance of asking the big questions, the ones that can't be solved with technology or science alone, the ones that remind us of our shared humanity. Her parents, standing close by, could see the change in her. She was no longer just their curious little girl. She was someone who had sparked a conversation that had the potential to change the way people viewed the world, and they, too, had found new answers to questions they hadn't even realized they were asking. The event was over, but the impact it had would ripple through the lives of everyone who had been there. It wasn't just a moment of inspiration. It was a turning point, a reminder that curiosity, no matter how small or simple, can lead to profound discoveries, that sometimes we don't need the answers right away. What matters most is that we keep asking, keep searching, and keep growing. This story of a little girl who asked a big question teaches us an important lesson: that we must never lose our sense of wonder, our ability to question, and our desire to connect with others on a deeper level. In a world that often prioritizes certainty, it is the uncertainty, the willingness to ask, to wonder, and to reflect that holds the greatest potential for growth. So as you walk away from this story, think about the questions that have been sitting in the back of your mind. What are you curious about? What truths do you seek? And how can your own questions, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant, lead you to deeper understanding and connection with the world around you? Embrace curiosity. Seek answers, but also embrace the uncertainty that comes with not knowing. It is through our questions that we uncover the true beauty of life, and it is through our shared reflections that we learn what it means to be human. Lily's simple question, born of innocence, had touched the hearts of so many. It had reminded them that the pursuit of knowledge is not just about what we can do with our hands or our minds, but about what we can discover when we open our hearts and minds to the unknown. So ask your questions. Don't be afraid to seek the big answers. And remember, it is through curiosity, kindness, and a sense of wonder that we grow and find meaning in this vast world. If this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe for more inspirational content and continue your own journey of exploration.